Great, here's the next step. There is a profound secret in how you begin your day. What you do in the first few moments after you wake up has a powerful effect on your heart, your mindset, your energy, and your connection with your Creator. For the believer, the day doesn't begin with checking messages or worrying about deadlines. The day begins with the remembrance of the one who gave us life after sleep, the one who will one day give us life after death. Starting your day with the name of Allah is not just a ritual, it's a foundation. Just as a house without a solid foundation will collapse, a day without the remembrance of Allah often feels scattered, stressful, and spiritually empty. But when you begin your morning by saying Bismillah in the name of Allah, you're acknowledging something deeply beautiful, that you are not in control, Allah is, that you are not alone, Allah is with you. That no matter what the day holds, you are placing your trust in the one who holds your soul and your destiny in his hands. This is why the Prophet would remember Allah immediately upon waking. He would say, Alhamdulillahil, lad, Hi ahiana bada ma amatana wa ilayhin, nushur. All praise is for Allah who gave us life after having taken it from us, and unto him is the resurrection. That is not just a dua, it's a shift in mindset. It's starting the day with gratitude and consciousness of your return to him. Saying the morning Adhkar is like placing your heart in Allah's care before the distractions of the dunya try to tear it away. It is choosing to remember before you react, to be spiritually alive before the world numbs your senses, to speak to the King before you speak to creation. When you wake up and immediately remember Allah, you're not just performing a righteous act. You are realigning your soul. You're sending a message to your heart. This day belongs to Allah, and I will not walk through it blind. Beginning the day with his name makes every step after that different. The worries become lighter, the decisions feel clearer, the interactions more meaningful. Why? Because your heart started with its true compass, the remembrance of its Lord. And when you begin with Bismillah, you are inviting barakah into your morning, in your time, your thoughts, your rizq, your relationships. Barakah doesn't always mean more, it means better, it means enough. It means serenity in the chaos. It means that Allah puts kar in what you do, even if it's small. That's why those who start their morning with Allah's name, with sincere adhkar, often find themselves feeling a calmness that others chase but never find. It's not because their life is easier, it's because their heart is anchored, and that is the difference between waking up to the world and waking up for Allah. There are unseen forces in our lives, both good and harmful. Every day we step into a world filled with tests, distractions, whispers, hardships, and countless things beyond our control. We lock our doors, we wear seatbelts, we take precautions for our physical safety. But how often do we remember to protect our souls? Morning adhkar are not just spiritual phrases, they are divinely prescribed shields, spiritual armor, designed to guard the heart, the mind, and even the body from harm that we cannot see. When the Prophet taught the Ummah the specific adhkar to recite in the morning, it wasn't just to increase rewards or maintain a habit. It was to give us a line of defense that no human system can replicate. The morning remembrance of Allah is like wearing invisible armor. With every verse, with every dhikr, with every supplication, a layer of divine protection surrounds you. The whispers of shaitan are blocked. The envy of others loses its reach. The harm that was written is deflected or softened by the mercy of Allah. When you say, Bismillahilad hila yadaru maz mihi shayan filadi wa lofis, samai wa huwas, Samiul Alim. In the name of Allah, with whose name nothing in the heavens or the earth can cause harm, and he is the all, hearing, all-knowing. You're not merely reciting words, you are placing trust in the one whose power extends over all creation. You are invoking a name that no evil can overcome. You're acknowledging that harm cannot touch you unless Allah wills it, and if he protects you, then what fear should remain? And it's not just physical harm. The adhkar shield you from emotional instability, from anxiety, from the spiritual corrosion that begins with neglect. Shaitan waits for the believer to wake up forgetful, hurried, distracted. He looks for the cracks in your armor. But when you begin your day with adhkar, you close those openings. You guard your thoughts. You guard your eyes. You guard your soul. Adhkar in the morning is not simply about remembrance. It's about awareness. It's an act of saying, Ya Allah, I cannot protect myself, so I turn to you. I seek your refuge. I ask you to be my shield in a world where I see only a part of what truly surrounds me. This is why the Prophet was so consistent in this practice. He would never start his day without seeking protection from the evils of the day, the whispers of the unseen, the envy of the envious, and the harm that can come from within and without. There is protection in every phrase. When you say, Ard, who by kalamatullah hatamati min shari ma khalaq, I seek refuge in the perfect words of Allah from the evil of what He has created. You are trusting in Allah's words, words that are more powerful than anything in the heavens and the earth, words that do not fade, words that the angels respond to, words that protect the vulnerable, uplift the weary, and strengthen the believer from the inside out. This shield doesn't stop the challenges of life, but it gives you divine coverage. It repels what was never meant to reach you. It neutralizes what was meant to harm you. It gives you a calm heart even in the storm, because you are wrapped in Allah's protection. And it continues throughout the day. The shield isn't temporary. It extends, it remains, as long as you remain connected. But when that connection fades, the shield weakens. When the Dhikr is forgotten, the heart becomes exposed again. So imagine a believer walking out of their home, armed not just with worldly tools, but with Allah's protection surrounding them like a fortress. Angels walk beside them. Shaitan flees from them. The day may be hard, but the soul is guarded. And that's why the morning Adhkar are not a routine. They are a lifeline. In a world where people are constantly chasing peace through noise, through distractions, through material escapes, there is one source of calm that never fades, never fails, and never changes: the remembrance of Allah. True inner peace isn't found in a vacation, a paycheck, or a moment of silence in a noisy world. It's found when the heart is aligned with its purpose, when the soul remembers where it came from and who it belongs to. And that begins with Dhikr, particularly in those early moments of the morning when the world is still quiet and the heart is most awake. The morning Dhikr is like spiritual oxygen for the believer. It fills the heart with tranquility before the demands of the day rush in. It anchors the soul before the storms begin to pull and push. It calms the mind, quiets the whispers, and allows a person to operate from a place of rootedness rather than restlessness. Allah says in the Quran, Allah bithikrillahi tatmain al-qulub, verily, in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. Surah Ar-Rad 13:28. This isn't just a poetic statement, it's a divine truth. When you sit in the stillness of dawn, facing your Lord, whispering words of glorification, seeking His refuge, praising His perfection, you are doing something the world doesn't understand. You are nourishing your soul. And the soul, when nourished, calms everything else. Many people wake up feeling anxious before the day even begins. There's a heaviness, a pressure, an inner tension that lingers beneath the surface. But those who begin with Dhikr often notice something remarkable. That weight begins to lift, the tightness in the chest loosens, the racing thoughts begin to slow, because Dhikr doesn't just connect you to Allah. It disconnects you from the burdens of the dunya. Morning remembrance redirects the focus. Instead of being overwhelmed by what lies ahead, the believer becomes grounded in who lies above. Instead of fearing the unknown of the day, they are reassured by the one who controls all outcomes. That alone brings a sense of contentment that money cannot buy and status cannot offer. Even a simple phrase, Subhan Allah wa bihamdihi, Subhan Allahil Azim, is more than just praise, it's a release. It's a letting go of all that troubles the heart and a turning toward the most merciful, the most powerful, the most loving. Each repetition becomes a wave washing over the soul, smoothing the jagged edges of stress and sorrow. And in those early morning hours, when the skies are painted in soft light and the air is pure, the act of remembering Allah becomes even more powerful. It's not a coincidence. That time, just after Fajr, is a time blessed by Allah. It's a time when the angels witness your worship, when the heart is closest to its fitra, when the world has not yet distracted you. People look for peace in isolation, in silence, in detachment, but a believer finds it in connection. Not detachment from the world, but attachment to Allah. Morning Dhikr creates a spiritual rhythm, a pattern of mindfulness that carries into the day. It reshapes the way you speak, the way you think, the way you respond to difficulty. There's a certain calmness that begins to dwell in the hearts of those who regularly engage in the morning Adhkar. It's not loud, it's not boastful, it's subtle but unmistakable. It's the peace of someone who knows they've spoken to their Lord before they've spoken to anyone else. Someone who has turned their worries into dua before turning them into complaints. Someone who walks into the day not seeking control, but surrendering to it, and in that surrender there is serenity. Because when the first words you speak are to Allah, when your first thoughts are elevated, when your first breaths are filled with His praise, something changes inside. You start the day not just aware, but awake. Not just living, but alive, and the world no longer feels as heavy because the heart is no longer carrying it alone. In a time where everything moves fast, where moments feel fleeting and days blur into weeks, there is something incredibly powerful about consistency. Not perfection, not quantity, but persistence in small acts, done sincerely day after day. And when it comes to Dhikr, that consistency becomes the secret doorway through which barakah flows into a person's life. Barakah is a word that doesn't translate cleanly into English. It's not just blessing, it's better, it's increase without explanation, it's goodness that multiplies, it's time that stretches, effort that bears fruit. Peace in the middle of storms, provision that reaches further than logic would predict. And one of the quietest, most overlooked ways to receive this divine gift is through the daily remembrance of Allah, especially when done with unwavering regularity. Many believers start with enthusiasm, reciting their Adhkar with focus and energy for a day, maybe a week, but then life gets busy, the phone rings, sleep overtakes them, urgency replaces sincerity, and the routine fades. But those who push through, who make Dhikr not an occasional act but a lifestyle, a daily deliberate priority, are the ones who begin to feel the shift. The Prophet taught that the most beloved deeds to Allah are those that are consistent, even if small. Why? Because the heart is always being shaped, and what you feed it regularly becomes its nature. If you remember Allah only occasionally, your heart will only feel close to Him occasionally. But if you remember Him every morning, every evening, with quiet conviction, your soul begins to crave it. It begins to depend on it, it begins to soften, to awaken, to come alive in ways that can't be explained. Consistency in Dhikr isn't just about routine, it's about relationship. A person who calls upon Allah every morning is not the same as the one who remembers Him only when crisis strikes. The first builds trust, builds connection, they make Allah part of their daily life, not a last resort, and that kind of remembrance invites a special kind of attention from the heavens. Barakah enters quietly. It doesn't announce itself, but suddenly you find that your tasks are done quicker, your energy lasts longer, your sleep is deeper, your words are kinder, your decisions carry more clarity, your sustenance increases, not just in quantity, but in quality. You find yourself where you need to be at the right time. You notice protection in places others overlook. You begin to walk through life with a subtle glow, because your soul is no longer dry, it's nourished with the water of remembrance. There is barakah in the way you manage your time, because you began your day with the one who owns all time. There is barakah in your relationships, because your heart remains tethered to the most merciful. There is barakah in your rizq, because you've asked the provider, Al-Razak, to bless your every step, and what's even more beautiful is that this consistency doesn't require perfection. You may be tired. You may be stressed, you may forget a phrase, but you come back the next morning and you try again. Allah doesn't expect you to always feel inspired. He loves that you keep showing up anyway, that you remember Him even when your heart feels dry. That you reach for His names even when the world has pulled you in every direction. This is the secret of barakah. It's not earned through grand gestures, but through humble consistency. through whispered subhanallahs when no one is watching, through quiet alhamdulillahs even when things are hard, through steadfast la ilaha illa Allah every morning, even when the heart feels heavy or distracted. And as that rhythm builds, as that habit becomes a part of you, you'll start to notice that things begin to shift, not just externally, but internally. What once felt burdensome becomes natural. What once felt rushed now feels like the most sacred part of your day. Because barakah doesn't just bless what you do, it blesses how you feel doing it. It lifts the weight from your shoulders. It slows down your racing mind. It opens doors you didn't know existed. So when a believer makes daily remembrance a part of their life, not as a ritual to check off, but as a commitment to connection, they become someone who lives not just a busy life, but a blessed one. And the more consistent they are, the more that barakah quietly fills every corner of their world, until even the smallest acts begin to overflow with divine favor. The most perfect example ever to walk this earth. The Prophet Muhammad was not just a messenger of divine revelation. He was a model of how to live, how to breathe, how to wake up, how to sleep, how to carry the remembrance of Allah in every state, in every condition. And among the most intimate, personal aspects of his daily life was his unwavering commitment to begin his mornings with Adhkar. His morning was not defined by schedules or screens. It was defined by remembrance. Before interacting with people, before addressing the matters of the world, the Prophet would begin by turning to the one who controls the world. The moment his blessed eyes opened, his lips would move in gratitude and recognition. Alhamdulillah hilad hiyahiona bada ma'amatana wa ilayhin. Nusher. All praise is due to Allah, who gave us life after causing us to die, and to him is the return. It wasn't just a habit, it was a state of heart. A spiritual alertness, a recognition that every breath was a gift, that life is temporary, that waking up is a mercy, and that the return to Allah is inevitable. This statement wasn't merely said, it was lived. After Fajr, he would remain seated in the masjid, engaging in Dhikr until the sun rose. His companions observed him, learned from him, and began to emulate that spiritual rhythm. The stillness of those early hours was not filled with idle talk or worry. It was filled with Tasbeeh, Tahmid, Takbir, and Tahleel. He didn't leave his home without seeking protection for the day ahead. His tongue would recite, Allahumma inna yasaluka khaira ma fi hadhal, yom wa'ad, hu bika min shari ma fihai. O Allah, I ask you for the good of this day, and I seek refuge in you from its evil. Each supplication he uttered was a means of both protection and elevation. He was teaching us not just through his words, but by his example, that the morning is a time to fortify the soul before facing the world, that true readiness isn't in preparation of the body, but in preparing the heart. Among the specific dhikr that he encouraged regularly was the recitation of La ilaha illa Allah wadahu la sharika la lahul mulk wa lahul hamdi wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. Recited 100 times, it carries the reward of freeing 10 slaves, recording 100 good deeds, erasing 100 sins, and providing protection from shaitan for the entire day. And then there was Ayat al-Kursi, recited after Fajr, a verse so powerful that the one who recites it is protected until the evening. The Prophet taught his companions to recite the last 2 verses of Surah al-Baqarah, assuring them that they suffice for protection and spiritual strength. He taught us to seek refuge from the evil of what he has created, from the envy of the jealous, from the whispers of shaitan, and from the evils of the day that may come unexpectedly. He would often say, Adhu by kalamotilohitamati min shari ma kolak. I seek refuge in the perfect words of Allah from the evil of what he has created. The remarkable part is not just what he said, but how consistently he said it, day after day, without fail, through joy and hardship, travel and stillness, health and illness. Because for him, morning dhikr was not optional, it was essential. It was his spiritual breathing, his grounding, his nourishment, and through that example, we're taught that if we want to truly follow him, we must internalize his rhythm, not just quote his words. He was the most conscious of Allah, and yet he turned to him constantly in remembrance. How much more then should we, who struggle, who forget, who falter, rancor ourselves in the same morning remembrances? The companions took his teachings to heart. They passed them down generation after generation, preserving every word, every sequence, every time of day, so that the Ummah could continue to experience that same light. These Adhkar were not just prophetic advice. They were spiritual blueprints designed by the most spiritually awakened soul to walk the earth, tailored for every believer seeking closeness, protection, and divine support. Even the structure of the Adhkar, the order, the phrasing, the repetitions, reflect a divine wisdom. It starts with praise, followed by supplication, then protection, then affirmations of Allah's oneness, power, and mercy. Each layer builds upon the next, strengthening the soul and softening the heart. It is as if the Prophet is personally guiding us through the early hours of our day, saying, "Let your first steps be toward Allah, let your first words be for Him, let your first shield be His remembrance." And the more you follow this sunnah not just in action, but in presence and intention, the more your life begins to reflect that prophetic light, the more you begin to respond instead of react, to see with clarity instead of confusion, to endure with calmness instead of anxiety. From the moment we open our eyes in the morning, we step into a world of tests, some visible, many hidden. While we might prepare for the obvious challenges of the day, meetings, tasks, conversations, there are other forces at work, unseen but persistent, subtle yet destructive, and among the greatest of these is the constant presence of Shaitan, who waits, plans, whispers, and strikes. His mission is not just to make us slip, but to make us forget, to live heedless, unguarded, spiritually exposed. And this is where the morning Adhkar comes in, not as a ritual, but as a fortress. Shaitan doesn't rest. He doesn't take breaks. He doesn't get tired of trying to lead the believer away from light and into darkness. But Allah, in His infinite mercy, has not left us defenseless. He has given us weapons, not physical, but spiritual. Not made of metal, but made of words. Words so heavy, so powerful, so sacred, that when a believer utters them with sincerity, they become a barrier between the soul and every harmful force, seen or unseen. The Prophet told us about the intensity of this battle. He warned us that Shaitan flows through the children of Adam like blood, that he sees us from where we cannot see him, that he tries to disrupt our thoughts, invade our hearts, manipulate our moods, and cast doubt into our faith. But he also taught us exactly how to protect ourselves, how to shield our minds from whispers, how to shield our actions from misguidance, and that begins every morning with the remembrance of Allah. When you recite, Ad, hu bilohi min ash-shaytan ar-rajim, I seek refuge in Allah from Shaitan, the accursed, you are not just saying words, you are actively rejecting his presence. You are turning to the one who created Shaitan, the one who sees what you cannot see, and saying, Ya Allah, protect me from the one who seeks to misguide me at every turn. And when you start your day with Ayat al-Kursi, the verse of Allah's power and authority, you're wrapping yourself in a verse that Shaitan cannot penetrate. The Prophet said that whoever recites Ayat al-Kursi in the morning is protected from Shaitan until the evening. That protection is real, but it is only accessed by those who choose to remember. One of the traps of Shaitan is to convince you that these words don't matter, that you're too busy, that one missed day won't harm. But that's how the armor begins to crack. That's how the heart becomes vulnerable. He doesn't attack all at once. He chips away slowly until the remembrance fades and the whispers get louder. But those who hold tight to their Adhkar each morning, they are not easily shaken, because Shaitan cannot overpower a heart that is actively remembering its Lord. He cannot manipulate a soul that begins each day by seeking Allah's help. The whispers become weaker. The traps become more visible. The heart becomes more alert. The Prophet gave us specific phrases to say not just for reward, but for protection from evil eyes, hidden harm, dark energies, envy, and even the internal evils within ourselves. When you say, Bismillahilad hilayyadarumaz mihi shayan fil ardi wa lafis, samai wa huwa as Samiul Alim, in the name of Allah, with whose name nothing can cause harm in the earth or in the sky, and He is the All. hearing, the all-knowing. 3 times in the morning, the Prophet guaranteed that no harm will affect you that day. That is a promise from the one who never spoke from his own desire. That is divine protection granted through the tongue that remembers. It's not just about avoiding physical harm. Shaitan's evil is often spiritual, corrupting your intention, feeding your ego, turning your sincerity into pride, your patience into anger, your silence into bitterness. But Dhikr clears that fog. It resets the heart. It exposes the tricks. It reconnects you to the only one who can shield you from what you cannot see. And as the day unfolds, there are countless traps laid before you. Temptations that distract, arguments that escalate, moments where your soul is pulled toward what displeases Allah. But a person who began with Dhikr is not walking alone. They are walking under the protection of the Most High. They are being watched by angels. They are being guided by a remembrance that lingers in their heart and shapes their responses. That protection continues as long as the tongue continues. As long as the heart remains engaged, as long as the connection with Allah remains strong, and even if a person slips, even if they falter, the one who is grounded in daily remembrance always finds their way back faster. Because Shaitan's hold is weaker, because their soul has tasted something that makes his whispers feel hollow, because they've been fortified from within. In a world that constantly demands more productivity, more achievement, more attention, it's easy to forget how much we've already been given. The eyes that see, the heart that beats, the mind that thinks, the breath that rises and falls effortlessly every few seconds. We live among blessings that we don't even pause to recognize, and yet Dhikr, the remembrance of Allah, is the key that unlocks awareness, and with awareness comes gratitude. Gratitude doesn't begin with what's in your hands. It begins with what's in your heart, and Dhikr is the cleansing of the heart from blindness to blessings. It's the gentle voice that reminds you, you have already been given far more than you realize. When a believer says Alhamdulillah, whether quietly in solitude or whispered between moments of stress, they are not simply uttering thanks, they are anchoring their soul to contentment, they are pushing back against the tide of greed, envy, and dissatisfaction that tries to flood the human heart. And each time that phrase is repeated, it reorients the heart back to Allah, the source of every good. Subhan Ali strips the soul of arrogance, reminding it of how perfect Allah is and how flawed we are in comparison. La ilaha illa Allah reminds us that nothing we chase, wealth, status, comfort, has the right to be worshipped, to be feared, to be depended on, except the one who created us. Allahu Akbar repositions us back to the truth, that no burden is too big when Allah is greater than all. And when you start your morning with these words, your lens shifts. You begin to see the gift of being alive, the blessing of a new day, the mercy of another chance. Dhikr doesn't add blessings to your life, it reveals them. It takes what is already present and brings it into your awareness. Suddenly the coffee tastes better, the walk feels softer, the quiet becomes sweeter, because the heart has remembered, and the one who remembers is never empty. But Dhikr is not just a source of gratitude, it is also a source of grounding. There is a certain steadiness that descends upon a person who engages in regular remembrance. Life no longer sways them so easily. Praise doesn't inflate them, criticism doesn't crush them, delays don't frustrate them, because they are grounded in something beyond circumstance, grounded in the names and attributes of the one who never changes, never fails, never forgets. When the heart is grounded through Dhikr, it no longer finds its value in worldly validation. It doesn't rise and fall with the markets, the moods, the trends, or the comments of others. It finds its stability in the remembrance of the one who sees all, hears all, and knows all. This grounding is what gives a person dignity. It's what makes their character firm. It's what allows them to respond to harm with patience, to blessings with humility, and to tests with perspective. A believer who remembers Allah regularly is like a tree with deep roots. The storms of life may shake the branches, but the trunk remains firm. The winds of hardship may pass, but they do not uproot the heart that is grounded in Dhikr. Because remembrance becomes more than a practice. It becomes a home, a place of return, a place of retreat, a place of clarity when everything else feels confusing, and in this grounding comes strength. The strength to be still when the world is rushing, the strength to be grateful when others are complaining, the strength to remain focused on what matters, even when distractions try to pull you in every direction. Dhikr softens the heart, but it also strengthens the soul. It humbles you before Allah while raising your spirit above the noise of the dunya. It reminds you that you are not defined by your circumstances, but by your connection. And connection with Allah, real, consistent, present-hearted connection, is what makes a person unshakable, even when life feels chaotic, even when plans fall apart, even when uncertainty clouds the mind. Dhikr becomes the grounding wire. A silent refuge, a quiet compass, a steady rhythm beneath the chaos, and the more frequently it is practiced, the more natural it becomes. Like breathing, like blinking, it begins to accompany the believer throughout the day, not just on the tongue, but within the chest, echoing in the heart, guiding the thoughts, shaping the reactions. There is a unique stillness in the early hours of the morning. Before the world awakens fully, before conversations begin, before the mind is cluttered with demands and decisions, there exists a window, quiet, gentle, wide open, for the soul to reconnect. It is in this sacred space that morning remembrance, or Adhkar, does something few other acts can achieve. It brings the heart to attention and the mind to clarity. In those early moments, as the light begins to creep across the sky, the believer who sits in stillness and engages in Dhikr is not simply fulfilling a sunnah. They are resetting their internal world before the external world makes its demands. And this reset is not only spiritual, it is mental, emotional, and psychological. Morning Dhikr clears the fog that settles overnight, the lingering anxieties, the subconscious fears, the burdens of yesterday. It doesn't erase the challenges ahead, but it repositions the mind to face them with calmness and confidence. The remembrance of Allah first thing in the morning is like wiping the glass of your inner vision clean. It removes the dust of worry and allows you to see your day through the lens of faith rather than fear. Each phrase, each Subhanallah, each Alhamdulillah, each La ilaha illa Ali serves as a light for the intellect and a balm for the heart. It's not just worship, it's orientation. It's the believer telling their own mind, this day will begin with Allah at the center. Everything else will fall into place around that. Modern life pulls the mind in 1,000 directions. Notifications, schedules, comparisons, worries, decisions, often all within the first hour of waking up. Without grounding, the mind becomes reactive, scattered, overstimulated. But Dhikr in the morning gathers the pieces of the mind, bringing them together under one intention, to walk the day in remembrance and presence. The soul that begins with Allah is not easily lost in distraction. And this is not just a spiritual principle. It's a lived reality. Many who commit to morning Adhkar describe a noticeable difference in the way their mind functions throughout the day. They feel more organized, less reactive. Their thoughts are clearer, their focus sharper, their emotional responses more controlled, because when the first voice they listen to is the voice of faith, all other voices become easier to filter. When the first thoughts are directed to Allah, intrusive thoughts find less room to settle. There is something profound about aligning the mind with the remembrance of the Creator before facing the creation. It trains the brain to think in terms of tawakkul, trust, sabr, patience, shukr, gratitude, and taqwa, awareness. These are not just spiritual concepts, they are mental frameworks, lenses through which a believer begins to process everything they encounter: conversations, challenges, news, setbacks, success. Morning Dhikr becomes a sort of compass. It brings direction to thoughts that would otherwise wander aimlessly. It gives structure to moments that would otherwise dissolve into distraction. It helps prioritize what matters, anchoring the mind in values instead of noise. It reduces impulsivity and increases basara, the deep insight that comes from hearts illuminated by remembrance. Even physiologically, the rhythm of Dhikr slows the breath, calms the nervous system, quiets the noise within. There's something deeply neurological about repeating the names of Allah, about declaring His greatness, acknowledging His mercy, surrendering to His will. It creates space between stimulus and response. Space for reflection, space for mercy, space for choice. And for the believer who wakes up feeling burdened, overwhelmed, or clouded with emotion, Dhikr is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It is the cleansing wind that passes through the mind, sweeping away heaviness, reminding it that clarity does not come from controlling every part of the day, but from beginning the day with the one who controls everything. It's the subtle but powerful difference between a person who begins the day in panic and a person who begins in peace. The world may be the same outside, but the internal atmosphere is completely different. Morning Adhkar does not guarantee ease, but it guarantees clarity, and clarity is what allows a person to face hardship with steadiness. It allows a person to recognize truth when they see it, to hold patience when it's hard, to pause before reacting, to seek purpose in the smallest actions. Because their mind has not been left unguarded, it has been aligned, it has been remembered, it has been brought into focus by the most powerful force of grounding, the remembrance of the one who fashioned the mind itself. There is something immensely sacred about the early morning, a time when the world is quiet, the distractions are still asleep, and the soul is closest to its natural state, awake, alert, yearning for direction. It is during these tranquil hours, when the light first breaks the darkness, that Allah has placed immense reward for those who turn to Him in remembrance. Not just ordinary reward, but a type of reward that reaches both the heavens and the heart, both the dunya and the akhirah. From the very beginning of the day, the believer has been gifted an opportunity to build a bank of reward that continues to grow long after the words have been spoken, and this is not an abstract hope. It is rooted in the clear, authentic promises made by the Prophet, who never spoke from desire, but only from revelation. The Prophet said, "Whoever says, La ilaha illa Allah wahdahu la sharika lah lahul mulku wa lahul hamdu wahyu wa la kulli shay'in qadir 100 times in the morning, will have the reward of freeing 10 slaves. 100 good deeds will be recorded for him. 100 sins will be erased. He will be protected from shaitan until the evening." Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim. This is not just a multiplication of deeds. It is a profound cleansing, a shield, and an investment. In those few minutes, the believer earns what others strive their entire lives for. The wiping away of 100 mistakes, the recording of 100 lights, a barrier from shaitan's grip for the entire day, and the reward of freeing not 1 but 10 slaves, a reward unmatched in worldly value or spiritual depth. There are promises of light on the day of judgment for those who remember Allah in the early hours, light that stretches in front of them, behind them, above them, light that distinguishes them in the darkest hour, when people will be stumbling across the bridge of Sirat. Those who began their days with Dhikr will be among those whose faces shine, whose scrolls are heavy, whose hearts are calm, and Allah Himself says in the Quran, "And remember your Lord much in the morning and evening. Indeed, those who remember Allah, He remembers them." Surah Al-Uz, Ab 33, 41-43 to be remembered by Allah. Is there a greater virtue than that? To be acknowledged by the King of Kings, by the one who created you, sees you, hears you. When a believer begins their morning remembering Allah, Allah responds by remembering them in a gathering far greater, far more honorable. The angels record it, the heavens echo it, and the soul feels it. There is also the reward of barakah, not just in deeds, but in time, in sustenance, in emotional capacity. The Prophet made a heartfelt dua, "O Allah, bless my ummah in its early hours." Sunan Ibn Majah, this blessing isn't just spiritual, it is practical. Those who begin their day with Dhikr often find themselves achieving more with less effort. Their minds are clearer, their decisions are wiser, their day unfolds with more ease. It's not that the path is free of obstacles, it's that the help of Allah is with them, making each step smoother, more meaningful, more rewarding. There is reward in the mere act of consistency itself. A person who remembers Allah each morning becomes among those whom the Prophet described as the Mufarid and have gone ahead. The companions asked, "Who are the Mufarid? And, O Messenger of Allah?" He replied, They are those men and women who remember Allah much. Sahih Muslim, they go ahead, not just in worship, but in peace, in insight, in connection. They live lives that are anchored in purpose, and they die lives surrounded by angels, and they rise on the day of judgment with scrolls filled with light. And even in moments of forgetfulness or weakness, the one who has a habit of mourning Dhikr finds that the rewards follow them, that the remembrance echoes in their actions. A word said at dawn leads to patience later at noon. A phrase whispered after Fajr leads to calmness in an argument at midday. A consistent habit of morning remembrance paves the road for a lifetime of spiritual momentum, of rewards that continue even in silence. Because the one who remembers Allah in the early morning doesn't just receive reward, they receive companionship. They become among those close to Allah, the ones who rise for Him, remember Him, thank Him, and surrender to Him before the day asks for anything else. And in return they are given gifts far beyond what they asked for. Making Adhkar a consistent part of your morning isn't just about adding another item to your daily to-do list. It's about retraining your soul to turn to its Creator first, before the world distracts it. It's about building a quiet sanctuary within your heart, a place you return to every single morning, before the deadlines, the stress, the scrolling, the rush. But we know how life pulls at us. We know that despite the best intentions, it can be difficult to stay consistent. That's why the goal isn't perfection. The goal is to begin to anchor and to grow. And the first step in making morning Adhkar a daily habit is to understand that it doesn't require hours. It requires intention. Even a few minutes, if done with sincerity, presence, and consistency, can transform the course of your day. It's not about how long you sit. It's about how deeply you connect in those moments. Start with something small, something light, something sustainable. One of the most effective tips is to tie your morning Adhkar to something you already do every day, like right after Fajr, or as you drink your morning coffee, or during your commute. The brain remembers patterns. And when you attach your Dhikr to a familiar routine, it becomes easier to maintain. Keep your Adhkar accessible. Have a printed list by your bedside or in your prayer space. Use an app or keep a bookmarked page on your phone. Make it as easy to reach for your morning Dhikr as it is to reach for your phone. When the barriers are removed, the habit has space to grow. Don't overwhelm yourself with quantity in the beginning. Instead, focus on quality. One subhanallah said with reflection is heavier in the scale than 100 said without thought. Begin with a few of the core morning Adhkar, those from the Sunnah, like the morning Tasbeeh, Tahmid, Tahleel, and the daily supplications for protection. Let those become your anchor. With time, expand as your heart yearns for more. Be patient with yourself. There will be days where your body is tired or your mind feels foggy, days where distractions creep in or you forget. But don't let one missed day turn into 5. Guilt doesn't build habits, gentle discipline does. Return the next day, try again. Each return strengthens the bond. Create a space, physically and emotionally, for your Adhkar. A corner in your room, a prayer mat that signals calmness, a moment of stillness where you are not multitasking. When you treat the act of remembrance as sacred, your heart responds with presence. The environment we create around a habit matters. Surround your Dhikr with simplicity and quiet, and you'll find your mind meets it with more serenity. Set your intention before sleeping. The night before, tell yourself, tomorrow morning I will begin my day with Allah. This quiet intention seeds a thought that will rise with the dawn. And when your eyes open, your soul will already be inclined to return to what it committed to the night before. And if you struggle to recite from memory, listen before you speak. There are recordings of beautiful morning Adhkar from trusted scholars and reciters. Listening to them can soften the heart, help with memorization, and keep your heart engaged even when your lips fall silent. With repetition, those words will slowly become part of your own rhythm. Track your consistency, not for pride, but for motivation. A small calendar, a check mark, a quiet note on your phone. Watching your streak grow is a quiet encouragement, but even more motivating is the inner shift you'll start to notice. Calmer mornings, more centered thoughts, increased patience. When your heart begins to crave that feeling, that connection, you'll know the habit is becoming rooted. Involve your family. If you're a parent, spouse, or sibling, share the habit. Recite together for a few minutes. Let the remembrance echo in your home. Let the walls hear the names of Allah in the early morning, and you'll notice the air feels different, lighter, more protected. Remembrance in a group has its own reward. It strengthens not just the individual, but the bond between souls striving together. Remind yourself of the why. This isn't just a habit, it's a lifeline. It's your soul drinking from the well before walking through the heat of the day. It's your shield, your compass, your fuel. When you remember why you're doing this, not for reward alone, but for nearness to Allah, you'll begin to protect it more fiercely. You'll defend those minutes like they're gold, because they are. And if ever you feel like giving up, remind yourself, even one sincere breath of remembrance is seen by Allah. Even one whispered Alhamdulillah is written, rewarded, cherished. Even one effort to stay consistent, even when tired, is a step closer to being among those whom Allah praises in the Quran. Those who remember Him in the mornings and the evenings, without distraction, without excuse, without forgetting. Making Adhkar a consistent part of your morning isn't just about adding another item to your daily to-do list. It's about retraining your soul to turn to its Creator first, before the world distracts it. It's about building a quiet sanctuary within your heart, a place you return to every single morning, before the deadlines, the stress, the scrolling, the rush. But we know how life pulls at us. We know that despite the best intentions, it can be difficult to stay consistent. That's why the goal isn't perfection. The goal is to begin, to anchor, and to grow. And the first step in making morning Adhkar a daily habit is to understand that it doesn't require hours. It requires intention. Even a few minutes, if done with sincerity, presence, and consistency, can transform the course of your day. It's not about how long you sit. It's about how deeply you connect in those moments. Start with something small, something light, something sustainable. One of the most effective tips is to tie your morning Adhkar to something you already do every day, like right after Fajr, or as you drink your morning coffee, or during your commute. The brain remembers patterns. And when you attach your Dhikr to a familiar routine, it becomes easier to maintain. Keep your Adhkar accessible. Have a printed list by your bedside or in your prayer space. Use an app or keep a bookmarked page on your phone. Make it as easy to reach for your morning Dhikr as it is to reach for your phone. When the barriers are removed, the habit has space to grow. Don't overwhelm yourself with quantity in the beginning. Instead, focus on quality. One Subhan Allah said with reflection is heavier in the scale than 100 said without thought. Begin with a few of the core morning Adhkar, those from the Sunnah, like the morning Tasbeeh, Tamid, Tolil, and the daily supplications for protection. Let those become your anchor. With time, expand as your heart yearns for more. Be patient with yourself. There will be days where your body is tired or your mind feels foggy, days where distractions creep in or you forget. But don't let one missed day turn into 5. Guilt doesn't build habits, gentle discipline does. Return the next day, try again. Each return strengthens the bond. Create a space physically and emotionally for your Adhkar. A corner in your room, a prayer mat that signals calmness, a moment of stillness where you are not multitasking. When you treat the act of remembrance as sacred, your heart responds with presence. The environment we create around a habit matters. Surround your Dhikr with simplicity and quiet, and you'll find your mind meets it with more serenity. Set your intention before sleeping. The night before, tell yourself, tomorrow morning, I will begin my day with Allah. This quiet intention seeds a thought that will rise with the dawn. And when your eyes open, your soul will already be inclined to return to what it committed to the night before. And if you struggle to recite from memory, listen before you speak. There are recordings of beautiful morning Adhkar from trusted scholars and reciters. Listening to them can soften the heart, help with memorization, and keep your heart engaged even when your lips fall silent. With repetition, those words will slowly become part of your own rhythm. Track your consistency, not for pride, but for motivation. A small calendar, a check mark, a quiet note on your phone. Watching your streak grow is a quiet encouragement. But even more motivating is the inner shift you'll start to notice. calmer mornings, more centered thoughts, increased patience. When your heart begins to crave that feeling, that connection, you'll know the habit is becoming rooted. Involve your family. If you're a parent, spouse, or sibling, share the habit. Recite together for a few minutes. Let the remembrance echo in your home. Let the walls hear the names of Allah in the early morning, and you'll notice the air feels different, lighter, more protected. Remembrance in a group has its own reward. It strengthens not just the individual, but the bond between souls striving together. Remind yourself of the why. This isn't just a habit, it's a lifeline. It's your soul drinking from the well before walking through the heat of the day. It's your shield, your compass, your fuel. When you remember why you're doing this, not for reward alone, but for nearness to Allah, you'll begin to protect it more fiercely. You'll defend those minutes like they're gold, because they are. And if ever you feel like giving up, remind yourself, even one sincere breath of remembrance is seen by Allah. Even one whispered Alhamdulillah is written, rewarded, cherished. Even one effort to stay consistent, even when tired, is a step closer to being among those whom Allah praises in the Quran, those who remember Him in the mornings and the evenings, without distraction, without excuse, without forgetting. Making Adhkar a consistent part of your morning isn't just about adding another item to your daily to-do list. It's about retraining your soul to turn to its Creator first, before the world distracts it. It's about building a quiet sanctuary within your heart, a place you return to every single morning, before the deadlines, the stress, the scrolling, the rush. But we know how life pulls at us. We know that despite the best intentions, it can be difficult to stay consistent. That's why the goal isn't perfection. The goal is to begin, to anchor, and to grow. And the first step in making morning Adhkar a daily habit is to understand that it doesn't require hours. It requires intention. Even a few minutes, if done with sincerity, presence, and consistency, can transform the course of your day. It's not about how long you sit. It's about how deeply you connect in those moments. Start with something small, something light, something sustainable. One of the most effective tips is to tie your morning Adhkar to something you already do every day, like right after Fajr, or as you drink your morning coffee, or during your commute. The brain remembers patterns. And when you attach your Dhikr to a familiar routine, it becomes easier to maintain. Keep your Adhkar accessible. Have a printed list by your bedside or in your prayer space. Use an app or keep a bookmarked page on your phone. Make it as easy to reach for your morning Dhikr as it is to reach for your phone. When the barriers are removed, the habit has space to grow. Don't overwhelm yourself with quantity in the beginning. Instead, focus on quality. One Subhanallah said with reflection is heavier in the scale than 100 said without thought. Begin with a few of the core morning Adhkar, those from the Sunnah, like the morning Tasbeeh, Tomid, Tolil, and the daily supplications for protection. Let those become your anchor. With time, expand as your heart yearns for more. Be patient with yourself. There will be days where your body is tired or your mind feels foggy. Days where distractions creep in or you forget. But don't let one missed day turn into 5. Guilt doesn't build habits. Gentle discipline does. Return the next day. Try again. Each return strengthens the bond. Create a space, physically and emotionally, for your Adhkar. A corner in your room, a prayer mat that signals calmness, a moment of stillness where you are not multitasking. When you treat the act of remembrance as sacred, your heart responds with presence. The environment we create around a habit matters. Surround your Dhikr with simplicity and quiet, and you'll find your mind meets it with more serenity. Set your intention before sleeping. The night before, tell yourself, tomorrow morning I will begin my day with Allah. This quiet intention seeds a thought that will rise with the dawn. And when your eyes open, your soul will already be inclined to return to what it committed to the night before. And if you struggle to recite from memory, listen before you speak. There are recordings of beautiful morning Adhkar from trusted scholars and reciters. Listening to them can soften the heart, help with memorization, and keep your heart engaged even when your lips fall silent. With repetition, those words will slowly become part of your own rhythm. Track your consistency, not for pride, but for motivation. A small calendar, a check mark, a quiet note on your phone. Watching your streak grow is a quiet encouragement, but even more motivating is the inner shift you'll start to notice. Calmer mornings, more centered thoughts, increased patience. When your heart begins to crave that feeling, that connection, you'll know the habit is becoming rooted. Involve your family. If you're a parent, spouse, or sibling, share the habit. Recite together for a few minutes. Let the remembrance echo in your home. Let the walls hear the names of Allah in the early morning, and you'll notice the air feels different, lighter, more protected. Remembrance in a group has its own reward. It strengthens not just the individual, but the bond between souls striving together. Remind yourself of the why. This isn't just a habit, it's a lifeline. It's your soul drinking from the well before walking through the heat of the day. It's your shield, your compass, your fuel. When you remember why you're doing this, not for reward alone, but for nearness to Allah, you'll begin to protect it more fiercely. You'll defend those minutes like they're gold, because they are. And if ever you feel like giving up, remind yourself, even one sincere breath of remembrance is seen by Allah. Even one whispered Alhamdulillah is written, rewarded, cherished. Even one effort to stay consistent, even when tired, is a step closer to being among those whom Allah praises in the Quran, those who remember Him in the mornings and the evenings, without distraction, without excuse, without forgetting.